All right. There you go. Okay. So today we're going to learn about Esther. This is a new book, and as we continue to learn about the Israelites, who's the people who actually came from Babylon, and then they were trying to build the temple, and we learned all the stories and difficulties, what it took for them to really rebuild the temple. So finally they were able to rebuild the temple, and story behind that after they built the temple. So we're going to going into the Esther, but I'll give you a little bit of a background of the book of Esther. Out of many books in Old Testament as well as New Testament, there are a few books that had a little bit of a challenge to really getting into the canon. One of the books that had a little bit challenge was this Esther. Um, Esther came into the canon around AD 300. So before then, people did not consider Esther as the canon. The reason this book has been challenged to really getting into canon is because when you read this, the Esther is not that long, but when you actually look at it, it's only have about you know, the 10 chapter actually. So it's not a whole lot long, but when you read this one, what you don't find, like not like any other books in the Old Testament, is that you won't find anywhere saying God, Lord, worship, law. None of those things are recorded in this book. So there's no mention of the God or Jehovah or any type of law, worship, and or the feast. None of those things are. Then people were saying, then how could this be Bible? So there was a lot of people going back and forth that this shouldn't be really just a part of the Bible, and more importantly, um, in today's world, we actually take a look at the books from the Qumran. I don't know if you know Qumran. Um, I think I did mention several times the oldest scrolls that we have found in the in history is the Qumran scroll that we have found. Qumran is one of the areas in Israel that people actually separated from the other people. They actually formed their own community, and they kept um, their own way of worshiping. They kept their scrolls, and what happened was later on, one of the shepherd boy lost the sheep. So he was looking for the sheep that he lost, and he was going from one cave to another cave to see where um, the sheep is. And he threw the rock into the cave, and he heard something cracking. And so he just got into um, the cave to see whether what was really cracked. Once he got inside, he found the bunch of the base, and inside there's lots of a scroll. Obviously, the shepherd boy did not know what it was, and he literally just took some part of it, and then he sold it to the local market. And the people who actually bought the scroll from the local market didn't even know what that was. And one day, someone actually passing by the market and then saw the scrolls, and I said, "Wait a second, this looks like this is the Moses Law. It is written in a very ancient day." And he bought that small piece of the scrolls, and he actually sent it to the institute who studied the Bible, and they actually looked at it and realized this is the oldest Bible that we ever found. So that was the history of how we found the Qumran's scrolls. And in today's world, Qumran's scroll is the oldest the scrolls that we know. the original scroll. Obviously, as you know, there's no original scrolls, neither in the Old Testament or the New Testament, by the way. Everything that we know is a copy, but this is the oldest copy that we ever found. And out of the scrolls that we found from the Qumran, Esther was not in that scroll. What that means is that they did not consider the Esther as a part of their canon or their scrolls, because the people who actually built their own community and lived in the Qumran area, they were a little bit different. They wanted to be separate from the secular world. They just wanted to really just keep the Moses law. So they had their own way. So many of the people think that John the Baptist was part of that community. I mean, there's no way to really validate whether that's the case or not, but that's a lot of the scholar is believed that John the Baptist might have actually came from from that community as well. So let me actually show you what that Qumran area looks like. I haven't shown you guys this before, but if we actually went to Israel, we would have actually gone to this place to really just check out ourselves, but that's a second story. But let me just show you. Do you see my screen? Okay. So as you can see here, like, you see there's a small cave here. Yeah, this is the Qumran area. I mean, this is not the only place, but you'll see the small area like this. You see the holes here. This is where they found the base that has the scroll in it. So when you go this is a kind of Qumran area. So this is like not near the city. It's just like it's a plain, and it's like a desert. Literally, that's what it is. This is where people lived in a community. So, like, for example, you see, yeah, you see this. Oops, let's keep moving. You see this scroll? This is the scrolls they found in the base. And obviously, this is very old, so sometimes they only find the pieces, not the full context. But it kept it pretty well, even though they kept it for thousands of years. Because the area is very dried, the scroll really kept it very well. So, for example, not this one. Yeah, so this is the kind of area where they lived, and where they actually had the something like this. This is where people used to live, and the cave is where they actually store their the scrolls. Let me see if I actually Qumran scroll. Yes. Qumran is just, I'll show you where this is. So this is a scroll, right? This is kind of how it was rolled into it, right? And I will show you like, for example, this is the base. They kept the the scrolls. So they actually put the scrolls in, they close it. And let me see if I can show the location. Yeah, right here. So this is the Dead Sea, as you know. So upper part of the Dead Sea, this is where the Qumran is. And this is Jerusalem. So from distance is not too far, but this is the upper part of the Dead Sea on the left side is where the Qumran is. So you can see there's a Jericho, there's a Bethlehem, and this is the Dead Sea. Of course, this Dead Sea looks a little bit different than how it is now, but let me show you what it looks like. Yeah, right here. You see it? So if you actually look at it from the bigger map, so this is the Galilee, and this is Jordan River, and the Qumran is somewhere right here. Does that okay? So when they found this the scrolls, obviously, as I mentioned, they did not find the Esther as part of their canons or in the scrolls. So we could see that even some part of the Israelite didn't even consider the Esther as part of the canon. However, there's the other party of the people, Israelites, they consider Esther is a very, very important book. So there's two distinctive groups. So one considered to be like, this is the Bible. And the other distinctive group is said, no, this is not part of the Bible. The reason that the other party considered this as part of the Bible is because when you read this, Esther, you will see almost nationalism about how they actually, praise about the Israelites and, how they defeated the Hamans. So the other party who considered that Esther was a very important book and boast about the book is because it is talks about the Israel and it talks about the how great the Israel is. So there's a lots of nationalism in this book. So there's a big part of the people who consider this as an important book. And another part is in the early church, many of the early church leader did not even talk about Esther at all. They did not really mention at all about the Esther. So we could tell how people really neglected the importance of the Esther. So for very, very long time, Esther was not part of the canon, but after AD 300, they decide to actually include this Esther as part of the canon. So before that time, people did not even consider this as part of the Bible. So I just wanted to give you some background of how the Esther came into the canon and what the challenges were. With that, so we're going to go right into the book of Esther. So let's just take a look at the context here. Let's go to Esther chapter 1. I'm going to read from verse 1. Now, in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus was who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the third year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants, the army of Persia and Media, and the nobles and governors of the province were before him. While he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days. And when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Susa, in citadel, both great and small, a feast last for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and violet hanging, fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rods and marble pillar, and also couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry. Marbles, mother of pearls, and precious stones, and drinks were served in golden vessels and vessels of different kinds, and royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. And drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion, for the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as each man desired. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace and belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, and Harbona, and Bigtha, and Abagtha, and Zathar, and Sarkaz, and 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown, in order to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commands delivered by the eunuch. At this, the king became enraged, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the time, for this was the king's procedures towards all who were versed in law and judgment, the man next to him being Karshena, Shathar, Admatha, and Tarshish, and Meres, and Marsena, and Menucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdoms, according to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she was not performed the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs. Then Menucan said in the presence of the kings and officials, not only against the king has the Queen Vashti done wrong, but also against all the officials and all the people who are in all the province of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands in contempt, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded the Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day the noble women of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will say the same to all the king's officials, and there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. If it's please the king, let royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persian and the Media, so that it may not be repealed, that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal positions to another who is better than she. So, when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all his kingdom, for it is vast, all women will give honor to their husband, high and low alike. This advice pleased the kings and princes, and the king did as Menucan proposed. He sent a letter to all the royal province, to every province in its own script, to every people in its own language, that every man be master in his own household and speak according to the language of his people. So, how many actually of you really know the story of Esther? Hmm? How many of you really knows the story of Esther? None of you? A little bit? Okay, so none of you really knows the story except Tony, or okay. All right, so let's understand uh, this story a little bit better. First of all, we hear in chapter 1 there is a king Ahasuerus. So as you can see here, now in the days of Ahasuerus, who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces. So he was the ruler of the Persian Empire. So the first king of the Persian Empire was Cyrus, as we know. He was the first one. So let's take a look at the kings of the Persia for a second. Just take a look at this. Let me see if I can find. Let me share my screen. Okay. So, of course, Achaemenid Empire really started from right here as the name Achaemenid. But when you see this blue color, this is before the Cyrus. So the Persia was very small regions of part of the Media, and obviously Cyrus the second is the one who actually just took over the Media and made Persia and Media really just merge into one country. And Cyrus the second is where the Persian Empire really started. So when you count it from the Cyrus the seconds, and I told you the story of Cambyses second and Bardia, which was the sons of Cyrus the second after he died, and I already told you how Cambyses second died in Egypt, and the Cambyses the second killed his brother, the Bardia, which is we know as Asmerides, and then Atossa, which is the really the copy of Bardia. He not assumed, and he actually pretended he is the Bardia who was killed, and he took over the Persian Empire for just a few months. But later, he was literally just driven out and killed by the seven the wise men of Persia, because there is no one else who can become a king after Cyrus II's and his family, because all his Cyrus II's sons died. Cambyses died and Bardia died, so there's nobody else who could become a king after these two sons. So what they did was, out of the seven the wise men, they decided, any one of us could really rule the Persia, so let's do this. So they actually played a game in the morning, and Darius the First became a king. And when you look at the Darius the First, he is somewhat related to the Cyrus. They're kind of like the very far distance relative. But anyway, the Cyrus the First became a king, and when not Cyrus, I'm sorry, Darius the First became a king, and he had older sons. But instead of making his older son to become a king after Darius the First, hang on one second. Darius the First married to the daughters of Cyrus the Second. So after, I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. Atossa is actually, I'm sorry, Atossa is not the pseudo Smerides. Atossa is the daughter of Cyrus the Second, who married to the Darius the First. So between the Darius the First and Atossa, which is the daughter of Cyrus the Second, after they married, even though Darius the First had the older sons, he gave the kingship over to Xerxes, because, there's no the proven history exactly why Darius the First made Xerxes the First as the next king. Many scholars believe that the reason Darius made Xerxes the first as the success king is that because he came from the Cyrus the Second's family, right? Because Atossa is the daughter of Cyrus the Second, so it makes more sense for the Persian to believe, Xerxes is the lines of Cyrus's line instead of Darius's line. So that's why Darius the First made Xerxes as the success king. So in this book, the Esther's, we see this now in the days of Ahasuerus. When you look at this, you will never see the Ahasuerus in this the the list of the kings of Persia. So then we're going to question ourselves, and then who is this Ahasuerus? Ahasuerus is literally Xerxes the first. That's, Ahasuerus is a different way of actually pronounce his name in different language. So in human history, we literally know him as Xerxes, Xerxes the first. But in the Bible, his name is referenced as Ahasuerus. So I just want to make sure that we get his names and know exactly who he is. All right. So coming back here. So the verse 1 says, in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces. So let me just show you what the Persian Empire looked like. Share my screen again. You see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what you will see here with the little bit of the pinkish orange colors that you see in here, the entire area that you see this the pinkish orange color is where the Ahasuerus, which is the king of Persia, ruled, which is pretty big. This is why, out of many empire that we know, even though before Persian Empire there was, some people call the Babylon empires and Assyrian Empire, but when you really think of it, even though Assyria or the Babylon was a big country, but they're only just small regions of the Persian Gulf area. This is where the Assyria was just a part of the area, and Babylon was some part of this area. So it was not as big as this the Persian Empire. So the Persian Empire is really what is considered to be the real empire. So they ruled from Egypt all the way over to the borders of India. So, which is really, really big. So, as you can see here, go all the way over to even into this area in European country as well. As you can see, this is where the Turkey, we know as a Turkey today, right? The Turkey all the way over to the India. So this is a pretty big regions that the Persian kings ruled. So he ruled a pretty big the regions. So when you look at the verse 2, in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the third year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and the governor of the province were before him. Okay, so let's just take a look up. Let me just share the screen one more time. When we talk about the Persia, there's 3 cities that we have to know very well. Out of the many the regions and city that the Persian ruled, so there are 3 main the area that we need to know is the capital of the Persia is Ecbatana, as you can see here, right in the middle. You see this where I'm pointing my mouse? Do you see my mouse or not? Yeah. So Ecbatana is the really capital of Persia. However, there's 2 important cities that we have to know. One is Susa, right here. You see this Susa right here? Susa is a very important city, which is what we're seeing here. As you can see here, the throne in Susa, the citadel. So the Susa is used to be one of the important city of the Babylon. But after Cyrus took over the Babylon, he actually kept the Susa. So the Persian king used to really go between the Ecbatana and Susa. And the other place that we have to remember is Persepolis. Persepolis is a very, very important the city that we have to know, not from the Bible's perspective, but from our human history perspective, because Persepolis is. Let me see if I can actually find some pictures of Persepolis. Let's see if I can find it. Actually, you know what? Let me just look for the map. Okay. Let me share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is the leftover of Persepolis right now. Let me see if I can find some. Yeah, so this is the Persepolis right now, but this is the kind of what they expected to be in the old days. So as you can see here, like you see this big pillars, very high. So what happened is when people, all this the regions that Persian ruled, and all the kings or the governors who they ruled, they come to give the Persian king a tribute. When they brought gift and when they tribute to the stuff, they used to come to Persepolis. The reason that they actually have them come to the Persepolis is because when you actually enter into the Persepolis, you literally just get, wow, but this is the kind of kings and this is the empire that they're ruling us. So they literally just wow the place, like, so give literally just to give people an impression how great and the Persian Empire is, and how great the Persian king is, because the area is just way big, and is just they literally captivated by the structures and architectures and how big the places. So this is where people come and give the tribute. So as I mentioned, those are three cities that we have to keep remember. One is what? Ecbatana. Second, Susa. Third, Persepolis. So right now, the Persepolis is actually part of the Iran. So, if you want to just see the place, we have to go to Iran. But obviously, we just can't go there to take a look at it. But I mean, this is one of the places that I really want to visit someday. But this is a kind of what they're kind of envisioning what the place will look like. But in this particular story that we're reading in Esther, they're in Susa. They're not in the Ecbatana nor the Persepolis. So they're actually having some sort of a party. But when they have a party, I mean, they have a big party. It's not like us, we're having a party for a couple days. They literally have 6 months of a party. They don't do anything. They're just like eat, drink, dancing. Literally 6 months of party. So it's at the different levels than what we actually envisioning. When did this happen? When we look at the chapter 1, verse 3. In the third year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his official and servants. What year? Third year of his reign. So, to give you a background of when he actually ruled this, the Persian Empire. So, according to the historians, Xerxes I ruled the Persian Empire between BC 486 through 465. I want you to write this down because it's important for you to remember the when he ruled this this Persian Empire. Let me just go back to let me see if I can go back again.
So he would have thrown this party 483 people.
483. That's correct. So because it's a third year into the his ruling. So let's just go back to the chart that I showed you before. Let's go back. Yeah, so right here. So you will see the time that Darius I ruled the Persian Empire. That's between the 522 to 486, and Xerxes I, he took over the Persian Empire between BC 486 to 65. So Xerxes I did not just become a king after Darius I. What I mean by it is Xerxes I was he was already a king, not in the entire Persian Empire, but he was the one who was ruling the old Babylonian cities in this regions already. He was already ruling that region. The reason that he's actually having a party in Susa is because he was the ruler of the Babylon Empire. So the Susa was a part of the main cities of Babylon, and since he has been ruling that region, it was a natural for him to really just to bring all the governors and royal princesses to have a party in Susa rather than Ecbatana. Does that make sense? The reason it is important for us to remember the time that Xerxes I ruling the Persian Empire is because you need to really understand the surrounding background of exactly why he's in this state. So that's something I'm going to talk about today. So he was having a party, and he brought lots of people to have this party. And let's go back. Verse 4. While he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days. So the reason that he's having this 6 months of a party is because why? He showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendors and pomp of his greatness for many days. He wanted to really share the people how great the Persian Empire is, how rich he is, and how great his the kingship is, so that everybody knows and that the cities and the countries that he's ruling, he wants to really just impress the people how great the Persian Empire is. Okay, so that's why he's having 180 days of a party. And verse 5 says, and when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Susa, the citadel, both great and small, a feast lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So even after 180 days of a party, there was a separate party reserved for it for 7 days. So he brought people to the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of a fine linen, and purple to silver rod and marble pillars, and also couches of a gold and silver on the mosaic pavement of porphyry marble, mother of pearls and precious stones. So you could imagine how beautiful this place is and how much things they decorated with the gold and silvers and the fine linens and purple and all these things, most expensive things. He wanted to show and how great this palace is. And verse 7 says, drink were served in golden vessels and vessels of a different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the kings, and drinking was according to his edict. There was no compulsion, for the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as an each man desire. So he was just letting everybody to do whatever they desired and drink and enjoy this party, which is a separate party. So this specific party that he hosted for 7 days is most likely is more high princesses and very high officials, not just everybody. Because for 6 months party, it was almost like entire empire was really enjoying, but this particular 7 days party is into his palace and specifically for those high officials and governors. And he was just like enjoying the party, and at the same time, Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace and belonged to King Ahasuerus. So the queen also hosting a separate party for the women to come. Imagine in the ancient days, men are, considers the most powerful species, and literally, women are not considered as important as the men. So when they're having a parties and drinkings, obviously there are a few things that you have to consider. Obviously, what do you need to have? You need to have drinks, you need to have music, you need to have like lots of dancings. And what do you think, who you think it has been dancing around? Obviously the women's, right? The women's who just dancing around. And who pours the wines and alcohol? Obviously the women's. So when they were having a party, usually the people who dancers and the people who really just beautiful looking women who brought into the palace just to serve their governors and princes and so forth. And Queen Vashti did not want to associate with those women, which they're kind of at the very different level, right? The most likely the Vashti was having a separate party apart from the King Ahasuerus' party to really just to bring all this high officials, the wives and governors' wives. So the very high level, the women's considered to be noble women's to be, being in a separate area, enjoying themselves in the separate party, not included with all this, woman dancing around and the high officials and princes were drunk and they're like flirting, with the women's and stuff like that. So they wanted to be completely separate. They wanted to enjoy their own party. So that's what she was having. However, on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wines, he commanded Mehumans, Biztha and Harbona and Bigtha and Abaktha and Zathars and Carcas and 7 Anuchi who served in the presence of a king Ahasuerus to bring Queen Vashti before a king with her royal crown in order to show the people and princes her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. So here's the thing. So on the 7th day, the king Ahasuerus was literally just like happy, and now he's in the mood, really just like drinking and enjoying the parties. And then he wanted to show his queen's Vashti to the people. when you think of it, when Ahasuerus wanted to show his queen to other high officials and the royal people, it's not like, hey, just come here and just say hi, right? So you could imagine what the king Ahasuerus was really thinking. He was literally drunk, and he was just like, hey, I wanted to show my wife. But it's not just just showing his queens and say hi, but rather most likely, most likely he wanted to show his queen to really just a dancing in front of all these high officials and the royal people. And from the Ashiti's perspective, what do you think she felt?
Probably demeaning.
Mm-mm. She, the reason that she had a separate party with women's high official, the wives, because she wanted to be different, right? She didn't want to associate with the women who's in the parties and being flirted with all these high officials and governors and high princesses. But now she is now brought to this party with all this drunken men, and she needs to dance around in front of those people. She never wanted to do this. I'd rather die if than come here and dancing around in front of the people, right? She was probably, felt that insulted, right? And she didn't want to just give up her dignity, right? So you have to understand from Ashiti's perspective. So, from the ladies who's actually just listening to this one, you could probably understand better. And you might have actually think that I would have done the same thing. But by doing this, literally, Ashiti is risking her life for this. Because back then in the ancient days, it's not like today's world, right? As I mentioned, women's, even she is the queen, still the woman is not considered as important as the man, right? So it's always been, looked down, and they're not considered as a someone important. Many of the, in the cases in the ancient days, people are considering women as a sort of the human who just bears child. Literally, that's how they treated a woman. Not in the same way the way that we treating the women in today's world, right? So she not coming into the party and doing what the Ahasuerus was asking for her to do. She was literally, I'd rather die than coming here and dancing around in front of all this drunken man. So you could understand why she did what she did. And might have actually, the Ahasuerus even asked for her to take off her clothes because he wanted to show how beautiful the queen is, right? So it's not just the dancing around, but literally, he could have actually had the queen to just take off her clothes. We don't know for sure, of course, but that could have happened. So coming back, verse 12. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commands delivered by the eunuch. At this, the king became enraged, and his anger burned within him. So even though the Ahasuerus was just, did this to bring the queen out, but the part is, queen rejected the offer of the king, which is from the king's perspective, it's not acceptable, right? Just, I want you to think about this from his perspective. The reason that he had this like 180 days of parties and extra 7 days of party with the high officials and, princesses, because he wanted to show off how powerful he is and how great, this Persian Empire is. But by seeing this queen rejecting his order, now what do you think he feels? he literally felt that he's a greatness and is a king of this empire, and empire has been literally ruined his reputations, right? His name has gone down because, oh, the queen doesn't even listen to the king's order. So he cannot take this very lightly, right? Even though the queen is beautiful, but it's not acceptable from his perspective. And I'll give a reason why this is very important to him in a moment. So this was not acceptable. So this is why his anger burned within him. Then king said to the wise men who knew the times, for he was the king's procedures towards all who were versed in law and judgment, the man next to him being Karshena and Shathars and Admatha and Tarshish and Merez and Marsena and Menucan and 7 princes of Persia and Media. These are the wise men that I mentioned. Remember, Darius the First was part of the wise men. There's the 7 wise men that I mentioned, right? So, among the king, there are always a 7 wise men. They give the advice to the kings of what they should do, and before they put things, the king's order into a law, they really just discuss with the 7 wise men and determine what they should do, right? So the 7 wise men are very important men. And who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom, according to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she has not performed the command of a king Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuch. Then Menucan said in the presence of the kings and officials, he's a part of one of the wise men, not only against the king has a Queen Vashti done wrong, but also against all the officials and all the people who are in all the province of a king Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded the Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day, the noble women of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will say the same to all the king's officials, and there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. So what they were afraid is that, hey, if we accept this, that queen did not really, or queen rejected the king's offer, if all this women's in Persia and all the high officials' wife, they learned about this, they will do the same thing, because this will become an example, so they will not listen to the high officials and their husband. So this will create all kinds of a mess in this empire. So kings, you cannot leave this just a matter as just a, forgetful matter, but this has to be controlled and this has to be put into a law. So continue on. Verse 19, if it please the king, let royal order to go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of a Persian and the Medes, so that it may not be repealed at Vashti is never again to become before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal positions to another who is better than she. So, when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all the kingdom, for it is vest, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike. This advice pleases the king and the princes. And the king did as Menucan proposed. He sent a letter to all the royal province, to every province in its own script, and every people in its own language, that every man be master in his own household and speak according to the language of his people. So as you know, 127 provinces he was ruling, so from Egypt all the way over to India area, which is pretty big, the regions that he was ruling. He was making sure that every regions and every countries that he was ruling received the same messages. right? So all the people of Persia, or people living under the control of the Persian Empire, they follow the same rules that the king has put in. So this become it is a law that the woman has to listen to her husbands, and they have to obey to her husband. So this is very important. And then let's just go to chapter 2 for a second. After these things, when the anger of a king Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered the Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. So literally, when you look at this verse, you can think that Ahasuerus is regretting what he did. Now, after he just, out of this party, and he's now in a right conscience and thinking, wait a second, what did I do? I literally just, removed the queens. What did I do? So now, Ahasuerus misses his, queen. I guess the queen, Ashiti, had done a lot to the king. So now, Ahasuerus is missing, his queen's Ashiti. So he was thinking, what did I do? I might have actually done wrong to my queen. And since all these officials has seen that now Ahasuerus is lonely and he's regretting for what he did, so the high official didn't say, hey, king, please bring your queen back. Obviously they cannot say it because now they put into a law that she can no longer be queen anymore, right? So, verse 2 says, then the king's young man who attended him said, let beautiful young virgin to be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint official in all the province of his kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgin to the harem in Susa, the citadel, under custody of Haggai, the king Anuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetic be given to them, and let the young woman who pleased the king be queen instead of Vashti. This pleased the kings, and he did so. So once again, what we can see in this the context is that Ahasuerus is lonely. He wants to be with the queens and who comfort the king, and just to be with them and just to enjoy some private conversations with Ahasuerus. Now, with this story, now we're going to take a look at some other story behind this one, which you might not see in this Bible. It's not might not see, but you don't see in this Bible. So we'll just kind of like look at the background of what is really happening in the background. Okay. So remember, what year that Xerxes the First became a king?
46.
Yeah, BC 486. He became a king, and after he became a king, this was the third year into his ruling of the Persian Empire, which is now is BC 483. Before he became a king, there were multiple revolt that occurred in the Persian Empire. One revolt that started during the time when he became a king. The first revolt started from Egypt. There was a revolt and go against the Persian Empire, and literally Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes the First, actually literally suppressed that revolt. And after he just stopped the revolt in Egypt, there was a second revolt started in Babylon. So when he actually became a king, he literally were busy for a few years to just suppress those revolt that occurred from various different regions. And out of a many, there are two areas. One, the first one I mentioned about the one occurred in Egypt. It took almost 2 years for him to really just suppress that revolt. And then when the revolt occurred in Babylon, which is the area where he was ruling, even though it was only a few months of a revolt that he was able to suppress it, and there was a second revolt in Babylon. So he was very busy for the first 3 years of his ruling of empire, that he was busy just literally fighting against this revolt that occurred in different region. And not only that, let me see if I can find. Let's just let me see if I can find this. Okay, let me just look at this. Do you see the map? Okay. Huh? Okay. So when you look at this map, this is a very important map for us to really look at. This is the map of a Greco-Persian war. What it means is that Greco represent Greek. Okay? So the war between the Persian and the Greeks is started from the times of Darius the First. So after Darius the First, who had the war with the Scythians, and literally he did not actually lose the war, but he didn't get anything out of the war, and he lost a lot of his armies. And after failure of the Scythians war, which is towards the east side of it, now he turned his eyes over to the west. So he started to look at the country of Greeks, that he wanted to just war against the Greeks. So the first war that he started is the Battle of Marathon. That you know how the Marathon started, right? Literally, when the Darius the First started a war against the Greek, and the place of where he had the first war, Darius the First really looked down and discounted the ability of the Greeks. And he literally just lost the war against the Greek. Darius the First wanted to just retreat all his armies, and he's been planning to reattack and give a revenge to the Greeks. So he's been planning all this war against the Greeks for quite some time. But while he was preparing to have the second attack of a Greek, literally, Darius died. So what happened is, this the first war that Darius the first king had against the Greek, is that literally their name was damaged. That until that time, Persian Empire and the kings of Persia was most powerful, strongest, and it is not breakable. So anywhere they invade into, they literally just destroy any countries or any towns or city they invade into. They literally just have the whole people kneel down before the Persian Empire. But Greek, on the other hand, they fought back. And not only they fought back against the Persian Empire, they won the battle against the Persian Empire, the greatest empire, at that time. So after Darius the First lost the battle, as I mentioned, he's been preparing to bring the second attack to a Greek, and then he died. When Xerxes the First became a king, obviously he suppressed all the revolt that occurred from Egypt and Babylon area. Now he's preparing to have a big war against the Greeks. Now, the war that he actually broke, or that he started, is the war that we know, or that I've been explaining many times in the past, is the Battle of Thermopylae. What is the Battle of Thermopylae? I mentioned in the past the movie 300. The war against the Greeks, and they had the first battle against a Spartan. All right? So, I actually had a little bit of, for the fun, just for this conversation. Let me just stop recording. Obviously, I mentioned about this movie in the past before, but literally, when Persian, the Xerxes the First sent the messenger over to Greeks, literally that's exactly what he asked for. Submit yourself and submit your earth and water is what they asked. And they just refused to really just submit themselves. So Spartan is the one who actually just fought against the Persian. So when we go back, let's see if we can go back to this the map that I showed you before. Share my screen again. So when he actually had attacked the Greek, he literally attacked from two different ways. One is he went through the ground. He sent the ground troops, right? And the other is over this Aegean Sea. So one from the ground troop, the other one is through the marine ship. So he attacked it from two different ways. So the first war that they had was Thermopylae's the war that we know as 300, and of course this movie has been exaggerated in than the real history, but it actually shows great part of how the Thermopylae's war happened. And obviously the interesting part is the Greek versus the Persian army is that let me see if I can show this other. Okay, this phalanx is the way the Greeks, the armies had to fight. The way the phalanx works is that they have a very, very long spears. Compared to normal spears, their spear is very long. The way they structure the army is like this, the one that you see in the picture. So if you come from front, there's no room to really just fight against this, because what you will see is just the spears. No matter which way you come, you can't get through this. This is how the Greeks, the army, the fought against any other armies. But Persians, on the other hand, they are the people who uses the sword, and they're good at spears. But they're not good at spears at all. I'm sorry. The Persians are good at arrows, not spears. Arrows and sword, not with spears. And they also had the spears, but nothing like what the Greek has. This is the very new method of fighting against any other army besides the Greeks. The Greek has this own way of fighting. They got their own structures and strategy to fight against the other armies. And this is the very typical phalanx mode that the Greeks used to fight against other armies. Okay? And as I mentioned, when you look at the movie 300, what you will see is I don't have the map. Yeah, I have it in the different places. But so the area Thermopylae, the war occurs. What happened is the area they're coming in becomes very narrow. It is in the area of where the sea is near the seas, and there's a cliff. So what happened is when they come in, the area becomes a very narrow, and at the same time, there's a turn. So when you think about this, it doesn't matter how many people coming. In order for you to get through that way, you have to go through the very narrow valley. Not only you have to go through the narrow valley, you have to make a turn. So what happened is the 300, those Spartans, of course, they're not only 300 Spartans, but other Greek armies as well behind. There are some other alliances there. But when Persians kind of like fighting against the Spartans, when they narrow into it, which means they have to kind of line up, right? Because the road becomes narrower and narrower. And then when they turn, what they did was as soon as they turn, they poke through the spears and push them out. And they just continue to fall. As they turn, fall, continue to turn, fall. So from the people behind the Persian army, you can think of it, they're making the way into it, right? They just keep moving. They just keep moving forward. But what they didn't know was every time they turn, they fall. They fall, right? They keep moving because they don't know what's happening in the behind, right? They keep pushing. They all fall. That's literally the strategy that Spartan uses to fight against this Persian. So the Persian literally lost good portion of their armies. So the first battle was they lost lots of the armies of a Persian. And second time when they actually sent the troops, this time they sent the different troops. So the Xerxes realized that this is it's a somewhat different types of war that we have. So let's just send the elite member. So they sent the elite members to the battle. So this particular the army that Xerxes the First sent it's called the Mortal. They're the elite members who is of the army, and they are the guard of the kings. So they sent the elite member, the immortals, but even they sent the immortal, they could not fight against the Spartan the way they were fighting, and they literally just poke through the phalanx mode that they had to poke through the spears. And whenever they shoot the arrows, they just literally guard it with their the shield. So literally, no matter how hard they fought against the Spartans, they keep losing. So they lost big portions of Immortals' armies at the same time on the second day. So there's no way they can get past through this Spartans. But unfortunately, there was the man from Spartans who leaked the secrets how to go behind their back. So he sold the secret pathway into the valley to attack the Spartans, and Xerxes literally just gave the lots of treasure to the guy who leaked the information, and he sent the separate troops behind the Spartans, and then um, they attacked from the front. They attacked from in the back. So Leonidas, which is the king of the Spartans, he knew that he's not going to really just be able to really stop them, because the number of the army that had just invaded into that area was just enormous. And this is why I asked you to just watch this movie 300 in the past, because even though it's an exaggerated version of the Thermopylae, the war, but it's definitely worthwhile to really watch this movie to see what kind of the war that they had at the time. So Leonidas literally just sent the most of his troops the back, because he knew this will be the final day to go against this the Persian. So literally, Leonidas died at the battle, but he didn't want to submit himself. They were very brave, and they literally say, "We die for our Greeks." And then all the 300s under Leonidas, they really just died in this war. And because of the Spartans, Xerxes had a big damage to his ground troops. He lost a big portion of his ground troops, even though he had a lots of the armies behind him. But it took longer than he planned. Initially, he thought it was a very easy the battle to just literally just sweep through this the Spartans on the way down to Athens. But they couldn't, because they were stopped by the Spartans. So the first battle, even though they destroyed the Spartans, they destroyed the Greeks, the damage that they had was severe. So literally, even though they were able to pass through that area, Xerxes the first, literally tasted the loss of his armies. So going back to this war again, this is the Thermopylae War. As I mentioned, there was a ground troop who actually sent the people. So this is Athens. This is where they are actually heading to, right? And then when they actually come through this, the ground troops, this is where they actually hit. This is a Thermopylae. Remember I mentioned about this is the valley area near the seas? So this is the kind of valley that they were fighting against, right? So as you can see, this is the pathway they were initially coming in. But later on, they actually splitted their armies, one into this road, and they actually sent the troops, go around and this troops. So it took much longer time for them to just to pass through this area. So it delayed almost more than a week for them to just to kind of get stuck in this area, not advancing into Athens. And what happened is the Spartan, and when he sent Leonidas, sent the rest of the troop back, and he just told the Greeks and say, hey, they're going to come in. So I want you to, move away and just move people away from Athens. So by the time the Persian reached Athens, they found nobody. The city was empty. So when they just came to the city, they realized that everybody already just gone, right? So Xerxes literally he was furious and mad that he was stopped by the Spartans, the Greeks, but at the same time, by the time when they actually reached the Athens, they couldn't do anything about it because everybody's gone. So he literally burned the cities, and he was so furious. So he did not have the real win of this battle. And then, as I mentioned, he sent the troops over the sea as well, right? And the second war that he had was over the seas. That's the war that I mentioned. You see, oops. Esther. Yeah. This is the second war that they had, which is the Battle of Salamis. Salamis is the war in the marine area. So what happened is Persians are not sea people. They don't know how to fight in sea, right? So, but they had a large amount of the ship that they sent over this sea area. But the Greeks were, as you know today, what is so famous in Greece today? What is so famous in Greece? You don't know? You don't seem to have any interest in Greece at all. They're very, very famous for the small islands and cruise ship. Cruise ship. You will find most, famous and the high quality cruise ships in Greece. You know the name Oasis. Do you know who Oasis is? You don't seem to know anything. You know Jackie, the wife of John F. Kennedy. Yes, she after JFK died, she married to Oasis, which was the literally the kings of the the cruise the industry. He was a billionaire, right? The Oasis was the literally the king of the cruise ship in Greece. Please, if just get some interest in histories or know something else other than Bible. This is what makes our Christians so narrow minded because we only look at the Bible. We don't look at anything else behind. Just look out and open up your horizon, please. Anyway, the Greeks, they're very strong in sea. And at the time, what happened is the wind was blowing from the land over to the seas. Usually the wind blows from the oceans over to the land, but wind was blowing in opposite direction. So since they're coming from the sea towards the land, the Persian was going against the wind. So it slows down the way they're approaching to the land, where Greeks, since the wind was blowing from the land over to the sea, they were moving very fast. And Persians are not the ocean people, right? The sea people. And literally, they had the strategies. They actually just to put Persian into the small area like this. So there were just the kind of all the ships on the red colors going just. So what they did was literally they put a gestures as if they're running away from them. So they follow the ships of the Greeks. They're coming into this area, right? So all the ships of the Persians are coming into this area in Salamis. When they put this into this, this area, the ships of a Persian could not move because there's so many ships that are coming into the smaller area. They literally put the fire into the ship and literally burned all the Persian ships. They were stuck and could not move. So literally, they lost most of the ships that they brought. That is the Battle of Salamis. Go back again. I'm sorry? Correct. It's the next movie after 300. There's another the battles that talks about the Salamis, the war, and I also shared that information with you guys before. So this is one of the paintings of a Salamis. You see? So this is the Armitas. Armitas is actually the Greek. She is a Greek. But because she was, she, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but her families and she was persecuted by the Greeks, so she just ran over to Persia and she became the commander of the Persian the ship, and the Greeks were fighting against. So this is the kind of paintings of Salamis. The Battle of Salamis is one of the most famous the marine battles in human history. So everybody knows about Salamis, the battles of Salamis. So going back again, as I mentioned, they literally did not get much out of the ground, the battle. They lost the war in the sea. What do you think the Xerxes feels? He is literally angry and furious. He could not get anything working. So the third time, right after that, he actually had a third war. Third war is it's called Plates, Plates. So that's the final battle against the Greeks. Right after, first one is the Thermopylae War, and second one is the Salamis War, and third was Plataea's War, and he also had literally his commander was killed, lost. It was disaster. So three war that he actually started, which is the Thermopylae, Battle of Salamis, and Plataea's. Three war against the Greeks. He literally had no output of it, or he literally lost all his armies. So I want you to think about this for a moment. This is a very important background that I mentioned. So let's go back to the chart that I showed you before. Now, going back to this map again, the first battle, which is the Battle of Marathon, which the Darius the First, had a first war against or the invasions over to a Greek, right? And he lost, right? That's the war with Darius the First. And after he was preparing for the second attack to Greek, obviously the Darius the First died, and literally Xerxes the First was literally wanted to revenge the Greeks, right? So he's sharpened his sword and said, I'm going to kill all these guys, right? Literally, then he started the war right after he actually suppressed all the revolt that he had in his own land. Now, look at the years that he actually started the battle. What year is that? Yeah, it's 480s, right? But when you actually look at 480s, literally, when let's just let me see if I can find this for a moment. Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, I don't have the diagram with me. Let me see if I can. thought I had a war. Oh, this one thing I want to also show. You see this the picture? Remember I mentioned about the Greeks fighting in phalanx, like with the very long spears? You could imagine, fighting against with a sword and then just running into it. What happens? They all get killed like this. This is exactly how they, literally they fought. So that's why they lost everything. Yeah, I don't have this. I don't have this. Remember the 300 that I showed you before? Let me see if we can go back again. Let me see. Let's take a look at the movie for a few more minutes again. Esther chapter 2. We're going to take a look at verse 16. And when Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in 7th year of his reign. So how many years he's been reigning? 7th year. When we started the chapter 1, how many years he was ruling the Persia? 3 years. So how many years had passed? So the 3rd year, and now it's the 7th year. So now 4 years has passed. So if it's a 7th year into his ruling, what year is that? $479, right? 479. So when did he had war with Greeks? 480. And what happens in the year of a 480? He lost the battle against the Greeks, right? 3 times in a row. And at the same time, he lost so many people. Imagine now, in that time, he draw all the armies from different regions that he was ruling. Now, for those people from the regions of Persia, they lost all their sons. All their son is dead in the battlefield, right? So what do you think they're feeling against Xerxes the First? Yeah, they lost their sons, their name gone down to the drain, right? Now Xerxes is the madman. So you think the people of Persia was happy with the Persian Empire? Nobody was happy. King was not happy. People of the regions under the Persian Empire were not happy at all. So, in order for them to start the war, there are 2 things that they need. Number 1, they need to draft the young men into the battle, right? Number 1. What else do you need? Weapons, equipments, all right? What they need is money, right? They need money. So how do you get the money? You collect taxes. So what do you think you have to do? increase the taxes. So then what happens to the people?
Even more.
They're even mad because they have to keep paying the taxes because they keep increasing the taxes. They actually lost their sons. They increased the taxes. So what do you think the people in Persia?
Revolt.
They started to having troubles. You could imagine what kind of the demosphere that they had at the time, right? And King was literally despaired because he lost a battle. People are not happy with him. And there's a start to have a lot of a small revolt here, there. And now what? He's got a lot of headache. What do you think he was looking for? The king. Someone who can be with him and comfort him. Like the Ashiti. That's exactly what Ashiti did. She was giving him comfort, being with him, being a company. But now, Queen is gone. Now he's alone. Do you understand the background of what's happening in the context here? Unless you understand the actual background of what was happening at the time, you will not going to understand why he was at the state where he is, why he was having this party. You get that? So now you have a little bit of a background of how the human history really occurred versus how it's actually just bring inside of the Bibles and why Esther's story is the way it is written is how it is written. All right? So we can continue on from chapter 2 next week. So, since now we have a better understanding of what this is about. All right?